The screen opens in black. Then, a hand, trembling, lays 3 polished wooden cigar boxes on a scarred mahogany table. Smoke curls, faint and amber-glowed in darkness. A man's eyes glint at the end of a chamber gown-lit corridor. They never saw it coming, the narrator intones. In the next 8 seconds, we glimpse a corpse slumped across the ballot tent, cigars still clenched between rigid fingers, and the hush of a town that dared not ask why. That is our hook. On the night of the election, the master died, killed by his own cigars. We travel back in time to 1898 in the small riverside town of Blackwater Falls, Virginia. A plantation estate deep in the glade shadows hides something old, a corruption older than Reconstruction, older than the master's gilded nameplate above the front door. On the surface, it's a respectable county, a church town, an orphanage run by the preacher's widow. But beneath, the gears of power grind silent. Enslaved families, indentured workers, freedmen living in the margins, everyone knows their place. But there is a whisper. Benjamin, his name seldom spoken in polite society, an enslaved man on the estate of Albert Winthrop, the master, who also holds the local election's patronage in his fist. On this one election night, everything converges. The master's cigars, the hidden ledger, the local church's untold secret, and a man who had borne more than the lash. The air smells of damp cedar, of old tobacco, of something burnt but not yet ash. The camera would linger on fine linen gloves, on the sacred hymn book open at the orphanage, on the corridor where Benjamin carries trays of cigar boxes for the master's political friends, and always the sense that an unseen weight presses upon the shoulders of the enslaved. We begin our descent. Blackwater Falls lies on the cusp of change, just after the Civil War's memory has faded into habited tradition, yet still very alive in the shadows of its chimneys and river docks. Albert Winthrop's estate, Golden Linden, is one of the few to survive the shift from cotton to mixed agriculture. He has erected a veneer of modernization, an electric light in his library, a brand new bell at the town church. But beneath the polish are tradition and terror. His family has held sway over the region for generations, and his power is rooted in a network of families, church elders, orphanage trustees, and invisible ledgers of debt and loyalty. Benjamin was born into the estate's staff, his mother a housemaid, his father a field hand who died at the riverbank when Benjamin was 8. He learnt to read only in secret, copying letters from the master's children and hiding scraps in the orphanage attic. He learnt the scent of cigars before he learnt the names of his siblings. The master smoked Cuban, always imported, polished in cedar boxes with his monogram. That monogram came to haunt Benjamin's dreams. The intertwined letters AW glowed in his mind. Over and over, like a cipher he yearned to break. In the orphanage across the property line, run by the widow Miss Eleanor Winthrop, Albert's aunt children whispered of Benjamin's midnight visits. She called them deliveries of the boxes to the church basement, where influential townfolk met after prayers. The townspeople spoke of civic duty and duty to the Lord, but behind closed doors suspicion and fear abounded. The orphanage echoed with distant moans, children who arrived in the night changed forever unaccounted for in the census. Churches offered hymns. The master offered cigars and patronage. Benjamin offered service. He carried the boxes. He watched. He listened. That night of the election, the church bells tolled. The townsfolk gathered in the hall, ballots cast under the master's supervision. The cigars emerged, polished and fragrant, offered to each guest. And Benjamin, invisible in the shadows, held the master's ledger of debts, silent, folding it close like scripture. The stage is set. The orphanage's facade is whitewashed, pristine in daytime light, but at dusk the windows gape like dark eyes. Miss Eleanor Winthrop's voice rings in the hallway at 9 sharp, beckoning children to bed. The smell of boiled cabbage drifts down the stairwell. The curtains are heavy with dust. The children's whispers tell of footsteps pacing in the attic, of a crib left empty, of a bed in the dormitory where a boy shivered though the night was warm. The local pastor blesses the orphanage and calls it our town's charity, while beneath the flooring the old cellar creaks with hidden sighs. The town pretends the orphanage is safe, but Benjamin knows where the laughter ends and the screams begin. He once found, beneath a loose floorboard, a bundle of contracts, signatures in elegant script, binding children to servitude beyond the estate's lands. Under terms, the master wrote himself. The words were sealed in wax with the same AW monogram. The cigars were delivered at the same time those children vanished. A pattern emerges in Benjamin's mind: smoke and servitude, ledger and silence. He watches the children line up for hymn practice in the church, hands folded, eyes lowered. He watches the master greet donors in the church foyer, offering cigars, shaking hands, promising jobs and futures. The power of the estate extends into pulpits, schools, the orphanage, the ballot boxes. Benjamin feels a hollow inside him that deepens each time he lights one of those cigars for the guests. The smell of cedar, of tobacco, of sweet cherry wrapper. It reminds him of the ash of his father's body floating down the river. He tastes smoke on his tongue, the velvety burn, and he remembers what he is forced to carry. Boxes of poison gilded in luxury. The town's veneer is thick. The ballots are cast in secrecy. The votes counted behind shutters, the cigars passed out under low lamps. The master's power is absolute. He controls who gets elected, owns who gets freed, shapes the orphanage's future. And Benjamin, a servant in plain sight, holds the ledger of secrets in a mind long sharpened by pain. That election night, the church hall is lit with gas lamps. The guests arrive in dinner coats and hats, cigars in hand. The orphanage head nods from a corner. Miss Eleanor smiles with the practiced warmth of privilege. And the candles flicker. Benjamin breathes the wax smell and the tobacco, his fist curling around the ledger in his pocket. The stage creaks. The night is ready. When the bell tolls 8 times, the hall hushes. The pastor gives a benediction. The votes are cast and the master steps forward with the cedar boxes. He lifts the lid of the first, the satin interior gleaming. The smoke of a lit cigar rises like a ghost. He draws attention. The guests turn, nod, inhale the scent, exhale relief. Outside in the corridors, Benjamin watches through a half-open door. He can feel the vibration of the master's voice. Tonight we choose more than ballots. We choose destiny. The words echo off the old wooden floorboards. The tension thick as tar. Inside the boxes lie not only cigars, but symbols. Each cigar wrapper bears the monogram AW. The boxes carried the master's promises, the promise of patronage, of favor, of loyalty for those who smoked and supported his candidate. But Benjamin sees the underside, the promise of silence, of compliance, of debt. He smells the cedar, feels the weight of the lids, and hears the record of the ledger clicking under his jacket. He knows the orphans' names, the contracts, the debts. He knows the burnt letters, the late-night visitors, the hush of the cellar. At 20 minutes past the hour, the master passes a box to a man named Collins, the town's banker. The banker flicks his match, the cigar ignites with a sigh, the tip glows orange. The banker inhales, closes his eyes, and for a moment the room shifts. The smoke becomes a veil. Benjamin tastes fear. He recalls his father's river death, the ripple of water, the choking. He remembers the orphan's late sobs in the attic. The master exhales a slow plume. He smiles. The guests applaud softly. The votes have been counted. The master's candidate has won. Drinks are poured. Cigars lit. The power network holds. Benjamin steps out of the shadows. He crosses the room carrying the third box. His movement is slow, like a prayer. The master glances at him, nods. Benjamin holds the box open. The master removes a cigar, flicks the match. Benjamin watches the flame reflect in the master's eye. He smells cedar smoke and old church hymnals and the dampness of cellar walls where the orphans slept. His memory floods. Outside, a clock chimes midnight, and then something in Benjamin's face shifts. In the moment the cigar glows in the master's fingers, Benjamin acts. He flips the lid of the third box, and from the velvet lining he removes not only a cigar but a folded slip of paper, his own script of vengeance. The master's smile falters. The guests lean forward. The smoke drifts upward like incense for the dead. Benjamin's heart hammers. The ledger's ink pulses in his mind. Names, debts, orphans, contracts, silence. The room's warmth changes. The liquor's scent mingles with tobacco and dread. Benjamin places the cigar into the master's hand. "For you, sir," he says, voice steady though his bones tremble. The master raises his brow. The guests murmur approval. The banker raises his glass. But then Benjamin tilts his head. "You're holding your own name," he says softly. The master's monogram carved into the band glows by lamplight. The cigar becomes a symbol-turned-dagger. Smoke curls. The guests freeze. The master's smile fades. The ledger in Benjamin's pocket becomes a weight, anchor to truth long submerged. In that instant the room tilts into darkness. The gas lamp flickers. A hush descends as if the walls themselves are listening. Benjamin steps forward. He opens his mouth, begins to speak of name and debt, of children bound in the orphanage, of the ledger's spiders that wove the town's power. The guests look at him, at the master, at the cigar in his hand. The smell of cedar becomes the smell of prison timber. The laughter fades. Outside the chairs scrape. A distant dog barks. The chimney groans. Smoke fills the room. The master coughs. His cigar falls from his lips. Benjamin watches the ember fade, the ash drop to the floor. He watches the master's face contort in anger and fear. The power has been interrupted. The hidden truth glimpsed. The audience in the hall shifts uneasily. The orphanage, the church, the ledger, they are exposed. The master raises his hand to silence the room, but Benjamin has already crossed the hall. He opens the ledger's clasp and throws the pages onto the table. The guests recoiled as if the papers seared their skin. Benjamin's voice now echoes. "You have smoked your silence for years. Tonight you inhale the ash of your own making." The room's gas lamps gutter. Shadows dance. The master's eyes widen. The guests rise. The ledger pages flutter like birds freed from cages. The children in the orphanage upstairs wake and press faces to the window. The election night revelry dissolves into dread. The papers on the table reveal the contract names. Children taken from their families, debts unpaid, church funds diverted, votes bought through cigars and service, the master's hidden web. The banker recoils, the pastor paled, and beneath the laughter a new sound emerges. Sobbing. Benjamin watches them scramble. He sees the lips of the banker quiver. He sees the pastor's tie loosen. He sees the master's cane tremble in his fist. The room's opulence becomes grotesque. Crystal glasses, cigar ash, spilled brandy, ledger bindings split. Benjamin remembers the orphanage's attic. The boy whose mattress had no springs. The girl whose eyes were hollow. The footsteps in the cellar. He remembers the church confessionals where the master sat behind the screen. The orphan's name whispered under threat. The cigar box passed as a bribe for silence. The election, the ballots, the power, they are all part of the same machine. Tonight the machine stalls. Someone in the crowd lights another cigar, but the flame stutters. The master's gardener, an older man who had worked in the estate since the war, stands and moves toward Benjamin, trembling. He whispers, "You cannot be here." Benjamin nods. The gardener's eyes fill with tears of regret. Outside the windows the winds pick up. The curtains flap like ghosts freed. The orphanage bells ring without cause. They have been wired to the estate's power grid. At midnight the transformer hums, the bell tolls, children stir. Benjamin takes a step backward and the ledger slides across the table with a soft thunk. The guests back away. They look at each other, uncertain. The master's voice is small, broken. "Benjamin, what are you doing?" Benjamin looks at him. His eyes contain the river's memory. The father's body floating downstream. The orphan's cry echoing in the cellar. He opens his mouth. "I am taking your cigar." He lifts the cigar the master still holds. The monogram AW burns faintly in the lamplight. He drops it into a brandy glass, and he sets the glass alight. The flame licks, the brandy catches, there is a popping sound. The cigar bursts into flame like a signal flare in slow motion. The guests shield their eyes. The master screams. In that moment, the election hall becomes a theater of unmasking. The flame of the cigar brandy glass projects tall shadows onto the ceiling. Smoke curls like serpents. The master's integrity cracks. The banker steps forward, lunging for the master's hand, but the master raises his other hand instead toward Benjamin. The orphanage bell's toll blends with distant thunder. One of the guests coughs. Another turns his coat inside out as if shedding guilt. The pastor stammers, "My God." But the words falter. Benjamin remains calm. He watches the glass shatter. The cigar's ashes swirl in the brandy pool, the monogram dissolving into flame. He listens to the master's retching cough, the guest's murmurs, the wind outside rattling window panes. He senses the old trauma in the walls, the plantation's attic where slaves slept in rough bunks, the orphanage's basement where children were counted as figures on a ledger rather than souls. He senses the long silence broken. Then, the master, in his rage, raises his cane. The gardener steps between them, his voice urgent. "Stop this." The master waves him away. The ledger pages flare in the candlelight. The guests scatter. The banker grabs his coat and leaves. The pastor bolts for the door. The orphanage head retreats, all but Benjamin, the master, the ledger, the flame. The master grabs Benjamin's wrist. The room goes still. The master's cane cracks across the wooden floor, an echo that collides with the bell's toll. Benjamin's eyes don't flinch. He lets the master hold his wrist. He lets the master grip his hand. And he whispers, "You made me smoke your sins for you." The master's grip falters. The ledger falls to the floor. The pages rustle like dry leaves. The room dims. The smoke lingers. The orphanage bell rings again and again, then stops. The storm outside rumbles. The master staggers. He falls onto a chair. The cigar boxes lie open, empty. The waiter's trays untouched. The election bells still ring in the town hall down the street, but Golden Linden's power is broken. Benjamin turns. He begins to walk away. He doesn't run. He walks through the hall, past the smoke-soaked chairs, past the aghast guests. The camera would follow his footsteps. The ledger pages fluttering behind him like wings, the floorboards creaking under weight of revelation. Outside the estate, the mahogany door closes softly. The storm howls, and the town of Blackwater Falls will never be the same. Morning brings mist over the river. The estate is silent. No assembly at the church. The orphanage bell remains still. The master's coffin lies in the hall, the cigar still in his cold hand. The monogram mark faint in the ashes. Newspapers in the nearby county print minimal obituaries. Albert Winthrop passes after brief illness. No mention of election night, no mention of the ledger. The guests have left town. The banker's office is closed. The pastor gone on extended leave. The orphanage rumored to be under renovation, but Benjamin walks the estate that dawn. He passes the garden where the gardener has already begun clearing ash and cigar butts. He enters the orphanage attic. The secret contract's now gone. He opens the ledger, pages torn out, some stained with blood, others with tears, others missing entirely. He smells the cedar of the shelves, the dampness of the basement. He sees the children's bunks still empty, nightshirts folded neatly on pillows. The master's furnishings still gleam as if expecting his return. The power network still hums in the walls. In the town of Blackwater Falls, families gather at church. The preacher prays for guidance. The orphanage children line up for breakfast. No one mentions the master's death, the election scandal, the disappeared children. The veil falls. The river carries its secrets downstream. Benjamin steps outside, looks at the river's flow. He thinks of his father's body, dragged under the water, unseen. He thinks of the master's cigars, polished and lethal. He thinks of the ledger, the orphanage, the ballots. And he knows that real power is not in the votes cast, but in the stories withheld. He stands at the water's edge and drops the ledger into the river. The pages soak, ink bleeds, the ledger sinks. He watches the ripples. He breathes the cold air. And he knows that the secret is out. Yet the institution remains. The church still opens its doors. The orphanage still rings its bell. The town still votes. The new master may yet arrive. But Benjamin has shifted the axis of fear. He has broken the cigar box chain. The master lies dead. The machine's gears exposed. Yet the story does not end in closure. Months later, a young boy from the orphanage disappears. His bed is empty. The headmaster calls it a wandering child, and the parents nod, silent. The church organizes prayer vigils. The town whispers but does not ask. Benjamin hears the whisper from the attic. Footsteps, then stillness. He returns to the cellar and sees the door ajar where the children's contracts once were. The room is colder than memory, the air thick with old cigar smoke and fear. He kneels by the wall and presses his ear against the floorboards. He hears nothing but an echo of children's laughter. In the church, the pastor preaches about repentance, about the power of forgiveness. But in his eyes, Benjamin sees the flicker of fear. The ledger's ghost, the broken system still alive in shadows. The banker comes back wearing a new coat and a new cigar, but he lowers his head when Benjamin passes. The gardener left town. Miss Eleanor resigned. The orphanage pretends renovation, but the attic remains locked. The children still arrive, still bow their heads, still ring the bell at 9. Benjamin works in the estate's kitchen now. The property is sold to a new owner. He carries trays of food and carries memories. The cigars are stored in the old library, unsold. The cedar boxes sit unopened. The monogram fades in dust. Benjamin one night opens a box and inhales the smell of tobacco, savoring the memory and the poison. He closes it and locks it away. The purpose of power, he knows, is to remain unseen. The master's death was spectacular, dramatic. But the real victory lies in the quiet, the hidden ledger, the disappeared contracts, the orphan's cry. He walks home along the riverbank, watching the water reflect the moonlight. He hears a branch snap. He turns but sees only the shadow of a heron. He breathes the river air, the smell of cedar and smoke and water. He thinks of all the names in the ledger. He thinks of the children. He thinks of the election. And he knows that some secrets are never meant to be discovered. But when they are, the world shifts. In the local archives, the election record for Blackwater Falls shows a margin of 50 votes. The master's candidate won. No mention of scandal. The orphanage is listed as community charity, established 1872 by the Winthrop family. The estate is listed as Golden Linden, formerly Winthrop. Sold 1899 to Eastern Syndicate. There is no note of cigars, of ledger, of master's death by Cigar. The official line, Albert Winthrop died after brief illness. Tobacco habit noted. The public record hides. The institution stands. Benjamin visits the archive late at night. He opens the ledger again, still damp from the river. The ink blurred. He transcribes every name he can read. He marks the children's names with a dot. He marks the donors with a star. He closes the book and locks it in his small rented room in town. He knows he cannot destroy the record, he must preserve it. Because the institution will try to bury every trace, because memory is power. In the church vestry, the pastor calls a meeting. Our community must move on, he says. The orphanage's new head promises transparency. But the same faces, the same vestries, the same cigars, though unbranded, pass quietly. The unseen network shifts its forms but remains intact. Benjamin watches from the pews. He feels the weight of eyes on him, feels the hush when he opens his Bible. He sees the monogram carved into the pew where the master once sat. He closes his eyes. At night he dreams of the river, of his father's body floating, of the ash of cigars falling like rain. He dreams of the master's box opening, of children's names crawling out, of ballots burning. He wakes with a start, the smell of cedar in his nostrils. He sits upright in the dark. And he knows the machine is wounded but not dead. The culture of Blackwater Falls shifts quietly. A new election approaches 5 years later. Benjamin, no longer a slave but still bound by memory, stands in the crowd at the hall. The new candidate speaks of progress and unity, shaking hands, offering cigars to the crowd. The cedar smell drifts across the room. It is the same ritual under a new name. Benjamin's chest tightens. The ledger in his room trembles in his mind. He watches a young boy slip behind the hall curtains, clutch a cigar box. The candidate laughs, offering the boy a cigar and a nod. The boy accepts, his eyes wide. Benjamin sees the accountant tallying names in the ledger. He feels the echo of the auction block, of the orphanage attic, of smoke and ledger and contracts. The powerful maintain their power by ritual. Election night, cigars, handshakes, promises. The master may have been gone, but the pattern continues. Benjamin rises. He steps forward and addresses the crowd. "Gentlemen," he says, voice low but steady, "I carried your cigars. I held your ledger. I saw the children." The room freezes. The candidate's smile disappears. The crowd stares. The cigars are passed around in silence. The monogram is unbranded now, but the symbol lingers. The ledger lies in Benjamin's hand. He reads names. He accuses. The ceremony unravels, then the blackout. The gas lamps flicker out. The guests stumble in darkness. The cigar boxes drop. The ledger pages flutter in the dark like trapped birds. The orphanage bell rings in the distance. The crowd flees. The candidates' vehicles roar away. The town's power trembles but remains. Benjamin stands alone with the ledger, the ashes, the smoke. In the aftermath, whispers swirl. Who is this man? What is this book? The power brokers circle in their offices. The cigars still offered behind closed doors. The orphanage closed for investigation. The new candidate delays endorsement. The church remains silent. But the ledger is no longer hidden. Benjamin makes copies, one paper by one paper, storing them in the attic of the old orphanage behind the relic shelf. The smell of decay and cedar fills the space. The orphan bed's unused. The wallpaper peeling. The silence heavy. Benjamin visits the river. He throws small clippings of the ledger into the current, watching ink dissolve. He knows the water carries memory downstream, but he ensures the ledger remains too. He visits each child listed in the book, now grown men and women living in other states bearing scars of the orphanage. They owe him their stories. He records their voices. The cough in the basement, the chain on the door, the smell of boiled cabbage, the face of a master offering a cigar. He binds the stories in a volume. He writes, "They tortured us with silence. I give you our names." At night he hears tapping on his window, a cigar box placed on the doorstep. Opened. Inside, a single cigar, wrapper unbranded. He picks it up, the smell of cedar heavy. He knows the ritual persists. He throws it into the fire. The smoke rises in his tiny apartment. He watches it, long and slow. The flame consumes the box. He feels the weight lift, but the ledger remains. The town moves on. The election season returns. The ritual returns. But the machine is wounded. The institution can no longer act with impunity because someone remembers the ledger. In the national historical narrative, nothing of Blackwater Falls appears. The archives list only the estate sale, the orphanage's change of ownership, a minor election result. No scandal, no noting of master's death by cigar, no exposed ledger. Institutional control thrives on omission. In the dark corners of libraries, Benjamin's ledger waits. He visits the archive again, requests microfilm of election records. He cross-references names. He writes footnotes in the margins of books. See Ledger, Blackwater Falls collection. He is alone, yet he is more than one. He is the memory keeper. In the church's back hall, he leaves copies of the ledger beneath hymnals. In the orphanage, he slips pages between mattress seams. At the banker's house, he leaves a single cigar band engraved AW on the doormat. The ritual of the cigars continues, but now with a ghost haunting them. The children of the orphanage look older, haunted. The church bells ring, but fewer gather. The town's elite laugh behind closed gates. The walls listen. Benjamin dreams of his father again, sees the river carrying the ledger's spilled pages, sees smoke wraiths rising from the cigar butts, sees ballots blown away in the wind. He wakes with the taste of ash. He breathes the river's mist. He hears footsteps in the orphanage attic. He stands at the threshold and whispers, "I remember." He writes a letter to each child in his ledger. "You are not forgotten." Some respond. Some do not. Some ask him to stop. Some ask him to continue. He watches the election cycle approach again. He walks the riverbank and counts ballots in his head, the ritual cigars handed out, the ledger's names ticking off like ghosts in a ledger of power. The orphanage finally closes under scandal. Not the one in Blackwater Falls, its name changed, sealed, but the one upstream, once connected through the same chain of contracts and cigars. Children testify, "We were given cigars when we arrived. The box of cigars came before the ledger. The local press prints small articles. History of orphanage reviewed. Past abuses investigated. But the main actors long gone or deceased. The estate of Golden Linden demolished. The riverbank landscaped. The church rebuilt. The banker's family moved to the city. Benjamin watches from the shadows. He sees the new generation smoking cigars without brand. He hears the word heritage used by the families. He sees the same cigar box ritual at election nights, but fewer people present. The ledger's name list grows older. Some children have died, some still carry the scars. He preserves the ledger in a locked trunk with labels. "Do not destroy." He writes an epilogue. Power survives by forgetting. We survive by remembering. Nightly he visits the river. He drops a rose into its currents. He listens to the water. He thinks of the master's coffin, the cigar in his hand, the dust of the monogrammed box. He thinks of children's bunk beds, the contracts, the ledger pages, the election hall. He knows the story will resurface one day. He asks, will someone pick it up? The camera would pan across the river's smooth surface, then to the tombstones at the estate's forgotten cemetery, then to the orphanage's boarded-up windows. The smell of cedar and smoke lingers, the rumble of construction in the distance, the sound of ballots being stuffed into boxes, and the ledger quietly waits. And then a journalist arrives in town. She hears the mention of cigar boxes, orphan contracts, election irregularities in hushed tones. She tracks Benjamin down. He meets her in the attic of the orphanage at dusk. Dust motes swirl in the lamplight. The broken bell stands behind them like a sentinel. She opens the trunk. The ledger spills. The cigar is boxed. She inhales the cedar. She reads the names. Tears form. Benjamin guides her through the estate grounds, the library where cigars were smoked, the basement where contracts stored, the riverbank where his father died. He shows her the mahogany table where the cigar boxes sat on that election night. He points to the guest chairs, the gas lamp sockets, the ledger pages strewn when he flung them. He sounds the hidden hum of the estate's power network, the church, the orphanage, the ballots, the cigars. He says, this is how they kept control. The journalist shivers. The air smells of decaying cedar and damp wood and old tobacco. She photographs the monogram imprint in the cigar box lid. She records the children's names from the ledger. She asks, what made you act that night? Benjamin's voice cracks. I had smoked your cigars for you. I had carried your ledger. I had counted your debts. I heard the children cry, and I lost the fear. She asks if he regrets the master's death. He replies he died by his own ritual. He inhaled the smoke he had used to bind others. But what matters is this. The system still breathes. I had to open its lungs. She writes up the story. The local paper refuses to publish. The national magazine demands cuts. The town's mayor sends polite rebuttals, but the story goes online. The ledger's names circulate. The Orphan Trauma Network responds. The estate's new owners issue statements. The church issues prayers. The cigars still lie in the box unsold. The documentary camera moves through the abandoned estate at midnight. The corridors hush. The library shelves sag with age. The cigar boxes are empty. The monogram AW faint. The lighting is blue-filtered, shadows long. The orphanage attic is boarded. A single bed sits on the floor, sheets folded. A child's toy lies on the mattress. The orphanage cellar door yawns. The river outside licks the bank. Smoke from a distant chimney drifts into the night. The sound of the bell pulses. A memory, not a call. Benjamin narrates in voiceover. Institutions depend on ritual. Cigars become currency. Ballots become script. Children become ledger lines. He walks the halls. He touches the wall where the ledger was hidden. He opens the window. The smell of cedar and the night wind rush in. He closes his eyes. He sees chains, he sees ballots, he sees smoke. The camera shows a close-up of a cigar band with the monogram AW. Then another close-up of a ledger page. Name, Mary Johnson. Orphan contract 1894. 10 years indenture. The camera pulls back to show Benjamin's hand, shaking. The viewer senses the weight of history, the suppressed truth, the ghost of power. He whispers, "They thought the cigars were a gift. They thought the church was sanctuary. They thought this town had outgrown slavery. They were wrong." The wind rattles the window pane. A door creaks. A child's sob echoes somewhere above. The camera tracks Benjamin's shadow as he descends the stairs. The estate exhales. The ritual continues, the themes deepen. We see that the story is not merely about one man or one master, but about institutional control. How power invisibly binds people through symbols, cigar boxes, through rituals, election night, through debt, children bound to servitude. The orphanage is the symbol of charity but also of servitude. The church is sanctuary but also complicit. The ballots are the facade of democracy, but also the instrument of control. Benjamin is the one who sees the contradiction. He walks into the church after service. Hymnals open, music swelling. The pastor smiles and offers him a handshake. No cigar this time. Benjamin allows the handshake. He seats himself in the back pew. He watches the painting of Christ on the cross, the stained glass windows, the whitewashed walls. He hears the congregation, words of forgiveness, words of charity, words of progress. And he hears the silence underneath, the ledger, the children, the cigars. He writes in his journal, smoke becomes veil, legislature becomes ledger, charity becomes contract. He closes the book. His reflection in the glass shows the monogrammed cigar band on his keyring. He turns it slowly until the light catches the AW. He stares. He breathes. He realizes the master is dead, but the monogram remains. From the orphanage basement, we hear children's taps on the walls at night. Benjamin hears them too. He goes there. He opens the hatch. He shines a lantern. The air is stale. Chains hang from the beams. The floorboards creak under his boots. He touches the cold iron. He places his cigar butts in his pocket. He's retrieved evidence. He breathes the dust. He knows the institution's core. A final election arrives. The town of Blackwater Falls votes for a new mayor. Cigars offered at the debate. Benjamin stands at the edge of the crowd, ledger in hand, camera footage rolling. The candidate lifts a cedar box. The crowd applauds. The smell of cedar, tobacco, and warm night air swirl. Benjamin steps forward, places the ledger on the candidate's podium. He opens it. The crowd gasps. He reads names. He reads years. He reads orphans, contracts, votes. The candidate stumbles. The cigar box drops. The crowd parts like the Red Sea. The church bells toll, but this time the people listen. The ritual is broken. The smoke clears. Benjamin's voice rises. Tonight you inhaled your own story. You smoked your secrets. You voted your obedience. You traded children for loyalty. The candidate tries to respond. Words fail. The crowd murmurs. Some smoke still in hands, some ash falling. Benjamin lets it sit. He allows the ritual to hang in the air like choking fog. In the frames of the documentary, we see the orchard at dusk, the orphanage's boarded windows, the river flowing fast, the master's coffin open for inspection, the cigars boxed and labeled, the ledger with names. The camera holds on Benjamin's face, calm, resolute, haunted. He drops the ledger on the podium. He walks away. The election hall remains, the cigars scattered, unclaimed. In the aftermath, change flickers like a candle in a storm. The orphanage is converted into a historical memorial for the forgotten children. The church issues audits of its funds. The banker resigns, but the estate's deep roots still exist, in local businesses, in the school board, and the cigar importers. A new monogram appears on a box, J.W. The ritual continues under new guise. The ledger must now be watched. Benjamin retreats. He sits by the riverbank at night, the ledger in his lap, cigar box beside him, mist rising off the water. He lights a cigar of his own choosing, not bowed to ritual but by his own will. The smoke drifts. He watches the river. He hears the orphan's footsteps in the dark. He breathes the cedar. He breathes the cedar of his own freedom and the ash of their servitude. He knows the dark secret will never be fully swallowed. The institutional power will always seek new monograms, new boxes, new elections. But now a witness stands, one man bearing the ledger, the scene, the story. He whispers into the night, "I will remember." The river replies with ripple, the wind with hiss, the smoke with swirl. The final scene. Dawn breaks over Blackwater Falls. A lone figure crosses the old estate grounds. The mansion is gutted, the orphanage closed. The church steeple remains. A new plaque reads, Site of Institution of Charity, 1872-1899. The cigar boxes lie in a museum display case. Monogram AW, open lids, cigar stub inside. Visitors gaze unaware of the full story. In the display placard, a footnote reads, Unknown events on election night 1898 led to disruption of local power structure. The camera pans to Benjamin in the crowd, older now, his face lined with memory. He watches people walk by, glance at the cases. He sees their faces unfocused. He knows the ritual continues beyond recognition. The cigars will be replaced. The votes will be sold. The children will still be ledger lines. But now someone remembers. He turns and walks away. The mist lifts. The river reflects light. The estate's windows yaw like hollow eyes. The orphanage bell is silent. The cigar box is closed. The ledger locked. The story buried but never gone. And the film ends with the rustle of pages, the hiss of smoke, and the echo of a promise. We remember so you cannot forget. Fade to black.